In a sleek boardroom on the 42nd floor of 1800 Riverfront Plaza, polished CEO Victoria watched her trusted inner circle raise flutes of champagne. Marcus leaned in, Brioni suit knife-sharp, Patek Philippe flashing on his wrist. "Sign it, Victoria. This deal will crown you queen of the industry. No one else has the guts." She signed. 23 floors below, at 2:41 a.m., night shift custodian Robert Hale was thrown out the service exit by 2 security guards. Victoria's voice cut through the concrete corridor like a whip. "You're just a janitor with delusions. Get your toolbox and disappear." She had no idea the man she had just humiliated was the only one who could still save her empire from total collapse. What was the one overlooked detail in the $875,000 acquisition that would flip every table in that room? Robert stood on the sidewalk in his gray coveralls, toolbox heavy in his right hand, the Chicago wind cutting through the fabric. He was 38 years old, single father to 9-year-old Sophie, and he had not always pushed a mop. 4 years earlier, he had been a decorated forensic accountant who exposed a $41 million embezzlement at his last firm. The whistleblower label stuck. Licenses revoked, reputation torched, wife gone. Now he worked the 11 to 7 maintenance shift so he could be home when Sophie woke up for school. He carried one thing with him every night: a worn blue pocket notebook, edges soft from years of use, the same one he had used to log irregularities back when people still listened. That notebook had just saved his job. For the moment. Because at 3:14 a.m., while rewiring a breaker panel on the finance floor, Robert had found something no one meant him to see. Shredded documents in the disposal bin, edges still warm. A single spreadsheet left open on the conference table. Hospital contracts for the target company, Pulse Diagnostics, numbers that made no sense for a firm its size. He did not photograph anything. He simply sat in the dim basement break room, battered laptop open, and cross-checked public filings anyone could have pulled. 3 shell LLCs, all of them sharing the exact same mailbox at 4417 Industrial Loop, Joliet. Circular cash flows. He wrote nothing that could be called stolen. He simply closed the notebook, slipped it back into his coveralls, and felt the old instinct settle in his chest. He was far more than the invisible night janitor. The next morning he waited outside the main boardroom, still in his uniform, notebook in his pocket. When security moved in, Victoria paused. Something in his steady gaze made her raise one hand. 5 minutes. Robert spoke without drama, voice low. Pulse manufactured those hospital contracts using Apex's own money funneled through those 3 shells. The people you trust most aren't shielding you. They're hiding behind you. Marcus stepped into the hallway at that exact second. Within moments, the warning became an accusation. Brooke claimed Robert must have stolen data from the servers. Trevor reminded everyone of Robert's very public dismissal in 2019, conveniently forgetting he had been fired for blowing the whistle, not for committing the crime. Victoria's face burned in front of the entire board. Escort him out. Security gripped his arms. Robert did not raise his voice. He simply looked at her. By tomorrow morning your name will be on documents Marcus himself would never dare sign. She approved the preliminary papers that same afternoon anyway. But his words lodged like a splinter she could not pull out. That night at 2:07 a.m. she could not sleep. She opened her digital signature archive in the silence of her penthouse. There it was, her executive signature attached to a 47-page liability transfer she had never opened, never read, never seen. Her pulse beat against her silk blouse. The next day she called Marcus into her corner office. He smiled the same easy smile that had comforted her for 9 years, patted her shoulder. Routine housekeeping. Brooke arrived minutes later carrying a $900 bottle of Pinot, turning tension into celebration. Victoria smiled the practiced camera smile. Then, without telling either of them, she asked IT for the complete login history tied to her account. The records were clear. Her credentials had been used from Marcus's own workstation at the exact hour she had been photographed at a charity gala 41 miles away. Nadia, the company's lone honest general counsel who had never been invited into the inner circle, warned her behind a closed door that the document transferred all verification responsibility onto Victoria personally. If regulators came, the board could claim she had knowingly approved falsified numbers. Shaking, Victoria drove alone that evening to 2846 South Keeler Avenue. Robert's modest third-floor walk-up smelled of fresh coffee and laundry soap. Sophie was at her grandmother's. A short phone call drifted from the kitchen, Robert promising to send the monthly support payment on time. He was not eager to help. "You only came because you're scared of losing your throne." Victoria asked him to tell her everything, no softening. He opened the blue notebook. The shell companies traced straight back through layered paperwork to Marcus, Trevor, and an investment vehicle Brooke quietly represented. This was only the surface. Victoria admitted in a whisper that she had ignored warning signs for years, because being alone again terrified her the way it had after her parents died at 19. Robert agreed to help on one condition. She would verify every claim with hard evidence and act only when the proof was ironclad. Later that night, back in her own penthouse, Victoria found Brooke already inside on the sofa. Brooke claimed she had borrowed the building manager's key to plan a surprise birthday party still weeks away. Victoria noticed her laptop had been moved 3 inches from its usual spot. She said nothing. Instead, she followed Robert's advice and announced publicly the next morning that she would close the Pulse deal inside 48 hours. The statement sent Marcus and Trevor scrambling to move deposit funds before anyone could look closer. Day 1 of the countdown had begun. 19 hours until the final signatures could be locked in. While the tower buzzed with manufactured urgency, Robert and Nadia worked from a rented storage unit off I-55. The air smelled of concrete dust and old cardboard. They traced the first layer of $27.4 million in circular payments. Every time Brooke had suggested a gala or retreat, Marcus had used Victoria's credentials while she was conveniently elsewhere. The pattern stretched back more than 2 years. Victoria began remembering 100 small moments. Marcus insisting he would handle the paperwork so she would not be bothered. Brooke choosing every assistant who sat outside her door. Trevor laughing and telling her not to waste time on the long financial appendices. The cage had been built with affection. Day 2, 17 hours to the auction of her reputation. Marcus learned Victoria had requested the raw Pulse files. He had Robert followed. Within hours, a gossip site ran the story claiming the night janitor was manipulating a grieving CEO. A photograph of Victoria leaving Robert's building appeared the same afternoon. The board began questioning her judgment in whispers she was never meant to hear. Marcus proposed with practiced concern that her authority be temporarily limited to protect the stock price. Victoria understood the real translation. They were accelerating the coup. Day 3, 14 hours remaining. Nadia uncovered a filing showing Marcus had begun drafting her removal papers 6 months earlier. At an unscheduled board meeting, Marcus announced with theatrical sorrow that Victoria had developed an inappropriate relationship with a disgraced former employee. Brooke cried on cue, claiming she had tried for months to save her friend. Trevor produced documents bearing Victoria's forged signature authorizing irregular payments. Victoria wanted to explode. Robert's hurried call urged patience. They still lacked the final undeniable link. She stayed silent. The board voted to suspend her immediately. Outside, cameras flashed. Brooke hugged her for the lenses, then whispered, "You should have known your place." By the time Victoria reached her penthouse, every access credential had been revoked. Invitations evaporated. The glittering circle that once toasted her success now mocked her across every outlet that would listen. Sitting on her kitchen floor at 1:19 a.m., Victoria blamed Robert bitterly for making her doubt everyone while failing to save the empire she had built from a 2-person lab in a converted warehouse into a $2.4 billion medical device powerhouse. He did not offer comfort. "Your pain isn't about the title. It's about admitting the people closest to you never loved the woman under the money. Furious, she ordered him out. He left the blue notebook on her counter. Alone, Victoria opened it. She learned Robert had once been a respected forensic accountant who lost everything for refusing to stay quiet. She also discovered that Marcus had deliberately hired Robert's old consulting firm for the Pulse due diligence, meaning he had known exactly who the night janitor was from the first day. The realization hit like ice water. She rushed to apologize, but Robert's apartment had been torn apart. Drawers emptied, cushions slashed. He was gone. The hard drive containing their evidence was missing. A text arrived from an unknown number. Accept full responsibility by morning or Robert would not stay safe. Nadia pointed out the message asked for no ransom and gave no location. Unusual for a real kidnapping. Victoria realized it was likely a bluff using Robert's stolen phone. Instead of confessing, she called an unscheduled press conference. Standing tall before the cameras, she announced she would hand every financial record to investigators with no conditions. She admitted she had trusted too easily but refused to take blame for crimes she had not committed. She froze the Pulse acquisition immediately. Behind the scenes, Nadia traced the last signal from Robert's phone to an abandoned storage facility in Joliet, once used by one of the shell companies. Victoria arrived with police. They found Robert locked in a dusty records room, shaken but unharmed. Two of Marcus's men had taken what they thought was the only hard drive. They never knew Robert had hidden the real memory card inside the small voltage tester he always carried in his coveralls. The card proved Marcus had moved tens of millions into a hidden account over 2 years. One problem remained. Expensive lawyers could claim the evidence had been obtained illegally. Robert remembered something from his accounting days. The company servers logged the exact workstation every time an executive digital signature was used. That unforgeable log lived in the data center beneath headquarters. Marcus was already preparing to wipe the entire system. Victoria decided to go back despite having zero credentials. Robert warned it could be a final trap. She looked him in the eye and said she would not let him face this truth alone. The tower loomed ahead, lights still burning on the 42nd floor. Victoria pulled her coat tighter against the midnight wind off Lake Michigan and slipped the small voltage tester into her blazer pocket. The worn plastic casing felt warm from Robert's hand when he'd passed it to her an hour earlier. Inside it, that memory card still waited like a heartbeat. She used the service entrance she'd learned about weeks ago, the one the night crew kept propped with a brick. The security camera above it had been offline since the storm 2 nights back. Her sneakers made no sound on the concrete steps as she descended toward the sub-basement. The data center door was locked with a biometric pad she had no right to touch. Victoria pressed her thumb to the glass anyway. Nothing. She tried again, slower. A soft click. The lock disengaged. Someone inside the system still remembered her clearance from the original build phase, the one nobody had bothered to revoke. Inside, the air tasted of chilled metal and ozone. Racks of servers hummed like a hive. Marcus's team had already begun the purge. Red progress bars crawled across 3 monitors. She sat at the master console, the voltage tester resting beside the keyboard like a talisman. Her fingers moved with muscle memory she hadn't used in years. But the log file was encrypted now. A new layer. She needed the passphrase. Back at the safe house on 18th and Halstead, Robert's hands shook as he brewed coffee at 3:17 a.m. The scent of burnt grounds filled the small kitchen. He kept glancing at the folded napkin on the table, the one Victoria had left behind the night they first compared notes. She'd drawn a tiny circuit diagram on it in blue pen. Now the ink had faded, but the lines still pointed true. A knock rattled the door. Nadia slipped inside carrying 2 laptops and a look that said trouble had followed her. Marcus just called an emergency audit. He's claiming the entire night crew log was falsified. If the board believes him, your evidence becomes contaminated. Victoria stared at the napkin. Then we give them something they can't dismiss. She returned to the tower at dawn wearing the same janitor's coveralls she once hated. The security guard at the lobby desk recognized her and smirked. "Lost again, Torres?" She didn't answer, just rode the freight elevator to the 42nd floor where Marcus was rehearsing his presentation in the glass-walled boardroom. His Brioni suit looked sharper than ever, the Patek on his wrist catching the early light like a threat. Victoria waited in the hallway until the room emptied for a break. Then she stepped inside and placed the voltage tester on the polished mahogany table. Marcus froze mid-sip of his espresso. "You're trespassing. Check the workstation logs," she said quietly. "Station 42. Every signature you used between March 17th and last Tuesday. The system still knows who sat there." He laughed once, sharp. "Those logs are being overwritten as we speak." "Not the mirror copy in the off-site cold storage," she answered. "The one you forgot existed because I built it on my own time in 2019. Invoice number 4471. His smile slipped for half a second. Then it returned colder. "Even if you have it, no judge will accept evidence taken without a warrant. You'll be arrested before the meeting starts." That afternoon, Victoria sat on a bench in Grant Park watching joggers pass. The voltage tester rested in her lap. A little girl no older than 7 dropped her stuffed rabbit nearby. The toy landed in the grass, one ear torn. Victoria picked it up, dusted it off, and handed it back with a gentle smile. The child's mother thanked her. For a moment, the weight on Victoria's chest felt lighter. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. The voice on the other end was distorted. "Walk away now or the board will learn exactly who you used to be. And what you did in Singapore in 2014. The line went dead. She closed her eyes. Singapore. The memory of rain on tarmac and 287 logged night missions tried to surface. She pushed it back down. Not yet. Nadia met her at a 24-hour diner on Wabash. The smell of fryer grease and weak coffee anchored them both. Robert arrived 10 minutes later carrying a slim briefcase. Inside were printed server logs, still warm from the printer at the public library. Each page showed Marcus's executive ID lighting up the exact terminal at the exact second millions moved offshore. But the board had already been fed a counterstory. Marcus's lawyers circulated an internal memo claiming Victoria had been dismissed for repeated security breaches. The memo carried 7 signatures, all forged. Victoria traced one of the signatures with her fingertip. The paper felt too smooth, too new. "They're panicking." Robert slid the folded napkin across the table. She had given it to him the night they first talked, the circuit diagram still visible. "This helped me once," he said. "Maybe it'll help again." She tucked the napkin into the same pocket as the voltage tester. 2 objects, 1 promise. The trap tightened at 2:14 a.m. Victoria was back in the data center when the lights died. Emergency reds kicked in. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. 2 men in dark suits blocked the only exit. One held a taser. The other carried a thumb drive meant to finish the wipe. She didn't run. Instead, she held up the voltage tester so the red light painted her face. "You're looking for this?" she asked. The bigger man lunged. She sidestepped, years of muscle memory guiding her. The taser sparked against a server rack. Plastic casing cracked. Sparks flew. In the chaos, she slapped the real memory card into the last unpurged port and hit enter. The master log began uploading to an encrypted cloud. Timestamped. Irrefutable. Workstation 42.
Marcus Hale.
$43.7 million transferred in 17 separate wires. The second man grabbed her arm. His grip was iron. "You're finished, Janitor." Victoria looked at him calmly. "Tell your boss the grind isn't over." She twisted free, left them coughing in the chemical smoke of a triggered halon system, and walked out the same way she came in. The voltage tester now carried a fresh scar across its casing, but it still worked. The napkin inside her pocket had picked up a smudge of grease and one tiny drop of blood that wasn't hers. The entire C-suite had gathered on the 42nd floor. Marcus stood at the head of the table in a charcoal brioni cut that morning, Italian shoes gleaming under the recessed lights. 23 directors waited for him to open the proceedings that would hand him permanent control of pulse dynamics and bury every accusation. Victoria waited in the corridor wearing the same coveralls, the voltage tester clipped to her belt like a badge of office. Robert stood beside her, quiet and steady. Nadia watched from the far end of the hall, phone ready to livestream if it came to that. A junior board member stepped out for air, saw her, and did a double take. "You're the night janitor." Victoria met his eyes. Among other things, she walked past him into the boardroom carrying nothing but the small worn device and the folded napkin. Every head turned. Marcus's face drained of color when he recognized the voltage tester dangling from her fingers. The room fell silent except for the low hum of the air system. She set the tester in the center of the long table. Then she unfolded the napkin beside it, the old circuit diagram now stained with coffee, grease, and blood. "Before you vote," she said, voice low and even, "you should see what Workstation 42 was doing at 2:14 a.m. on March 17th, 2 years ago, and every month since." She pressed play on the small screen clipped to the tester. The log file bloomed across the wall monitor behind Marcus. One line at a time, one signature at a time, one stolen dollar at a time. The board members leaned forward. Marcus's polished facade cracked down the middle like expensive glass. But the upload wasn't finished. A new password prompt had appeared on the master terminal, something Marcus had added at 4 a.m. that morning. The final gate. Victoria felt the tension coil in her shoulders. The little stuffed rabbit from the park flashed in her mind. Its torn ear, the child's grateful smile. Small things, true things. She looked across the table at the man who had once sneered at her in these same halls and said, "Clean this mess up or get out of my building." Now that same man was sweating through his $6,000 suit. She reached into the pocket of her coveralls and pulled out the folded napkin again. The old circuit diagram. She laid it flat beside the terminal, tracing one greasy line with her fingertip. That line had once carried power to Workstation 42 at 2:14 a.m., the exact minute Marcus's skimming script woke up. She typed a 16-digit sequence she had memorized 2 years earlier, back when this building still trusted her with more than a mop. The prompt blinked. Accepted. A soft collective exhale rippled through the room. Marcus's jaw tightened so hard she heard the click of his teeth. But the upload bar had frozen at 73%. A secondary firewall had just flickered to life on the secondary server rack downstairs. Someone had triggered it remotely. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She knew the signature. It was Marcus's personal VPN, the one routed through a shell company in Singapore. He was trying to kill the evidence from the outside. She stood. "Robert." The quiet mechanic stepped forward from the doorway, toolbox already open. Inside lay the same voltage tester, now connected to a small black box she had built in the basement of the shelter 3 nights earlier. Robert handed it over without a word. The weight felt familiar, grounding. Victoria walked to the window. Below, the city lights stretched toward the river. She clipped the tester to the Ethernet port hidden behind the boardroom credenza and watched the tiny screen flicker. Green bars began climbing. Marcus rose halfway out of his chair. "That's illegal surveillance." "You can't." "I can," she said simply, "because I wrote the original firmware. Every line. Before they promoted you." A junior analyst in the corner actually dropped his pen. Nadia's phone was still recording from the hallway. The live stream counter ticked past 4,000 viewers. The grind continued. The secondary firewall cracked. The upload resumed. But now a new alert pinged across the monitor. Remote wipe initiated on the offshore accounts. Marcus had pressed the dead man switch. $47,000 were about to vanish into encrypted oblivion. Victoria allowed herself one slow breath. She thought of the little stuffed rabbit again, its single torn ear, the way the child in the shelter had hugged it after she fixed the blown transformer that kept their lights on. Small things, true things. She would not let this man erase evidence the way he had once tried to erase her. She typed a command only 6 people on Earth knew. The command that had once shut down an entire sector of the grid during the '09 blackout and brought it back online in 90 seconds. The command she had used when she still wore a different badge, one with stars on the collar. The wipe reversed. The money stopped moving. A new balance appeared on screen. $2,847,119.32. Every cent traced back to the exact timestamps on her napkin. Marcus sank back into his chair. The $6,000 suit now clung to him like cheap plastic. The board members were no longer watching the screen. They were watching her. One older woman in a charcoal blazer leaned forward and whispered, "Who are you?" Victoria didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she walked to the head of the table and placed the worn voltage tester directly in front of Marcus. The device still carried the faint scent of ozone and machine oil from the night she had first caught his theft. "Unless you want to explain to these people why the pension fund is missing $940,000. Silence swallowed the room. The air system hummed louder now, as if the building itself were holding its breath. Marcus stared at the tester. His manicured hands trembled once, then stilled. For the first time, the polished mask slipped completely. He looked human, scared, and something else, almost relieved. Victoria folded the napkin and slid it back into her pocket. The same napkin that had once wiped grease from her hands while she taught a group of shelter kids how electricity really worked. The same one the little girl had used to draw a crude picture of a rabbit with a torn ear. A soft knock came from the corridor. A night shift electrician poked his head in, toolbox in hand, eyes widening when he saw Victoria at the head of the table. He recognized the tester. He recognized the calm way she held the room. "Ma'am," he said, voice hushed with sudden respect. "We've got a power fluctuation on sublevel 3. The backup generators are behaving strangely, almost like someone's feeding them false load data." Victoria's eyes met Marcus's for a long second. He looked away first. She stood, picked up the tester, and headed for the door. The board members rose as one, unsure whether to follow or stay. Nadia kept the live stream running. Robert fell in beside her like a shadow that had always belonged there. "Stay here," she told the room. "Watch the screen. The next signature appears at 2:14 a.m. exactly. Same as always." She stepped into the corridor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the same lights she had once replaced on her hands and knees while Marcus walked past without a glance. The sublevel 3 corridor smelled of concrete dust and cooling oil. The generators throbbed in the distance like a wounded heart. Victoria clipped the tester to the main trunk line and watched the reading spike, then settle. Marcus had tried to overload them from afar, hoping a building-wide blackout would buy him time. She adjusted one dial. The spike flattened. The heartbeat steadied. Behind her, the electrician from the night shift stood watching, mouth slightly open. "You're her," he whispered. "The one who redesigned the entire grid after the flood in 14. They said you were a myth." Victoria didn't turn around. "I was just doing my job." She thought of the little stuffed rabbit again. The child who had clung to it while the shelter lights flickered back on that same night in 14. The child who was now old enough to ask why the nice lady who fixed things never stayed for breakfast. Small things, true things. The generator hum smoothed into a perfect 60 Hz tone. The upload bar in the boardroom above would have just jumped another 6%. Victoria Stratton. The folded napkin pressed against her chest like a second heartbeat. She started walking back toward the elevator. The electrician followed at a respectful distance, as if afraid to break whatever spell she carried. Marcus would be waiting. The board would be waiting. The next password, the next firewall, the next desperate move. The grind had not slowed. It had only found a deeper rhythm. And with every passing minute, the man in the $6,000 suit was learning what she had known since the night he first told her to take her box and get out. Some debts are paid in seconds. Others take days. She pressed the elevator button. The doors opened with a soft chime. Victoria stepped inside. The voltage tester still clipped to her belt like the only badge she had ever needed. The next mini-crisis was already forming on the rooftop uplink. She could feel it in the faint static charge that traveled up the metal walls. Marcus was throwing everything at her now. She allowed the smallest nod to herself in the mirrored elevator wall. Let him. The rabbit with the torn ear had survived worse. So had she. The doors closed. The car began its ascent. The elevator doors sighed open on the 23rd floor. Victoria stepped out into the dim service corridor. The air smelled of overheated relays and fresh coffee someone had forgotten on a windowsill. She moved past the humming server racks without breaking stride. The voltage tester swung at her hip like a pendulum. Up ahead, red warning strobes painted the ceiling in slow pulses. Marcus had locked the rooftop uplink behind a new encryption wall. The kind that required physical presence and a 6-character seed only the original architect would recognize. She paused at the access hatch. The metal was cold under her palm. From her jacket pocket she pulled the folded napkin, the one she had carried since the night he fired her in front of the entire night crew. The ink had faded, but the child's crayon drawing was still visible. A stick-figure woman holding a lightning bolt, a tiny rabbit at her feet. She ran her thumb across the torn ear of the drawn rabbit. Same tear as the real one still sitting on her daughter's nightstand at home. The hatch clicked open. Wind slapped her face as she climbed the last ladder. 40 stories above the city, the uplink dish groaned against its mounts. Marcus had sent a firmware update that was corrupting the signal in real time. Error code 4471 flashed across the diagnostic panel. She almost smiled. Same invoice number he had used to sign her termination papers. She knelt beside the dish, fingers moving with muscle memory older than this building. The wind carried the distant honk of taxis on Lexington. She bypassed the corrupted module, rerouted power through a secondary coil she had installed herself back in 2014. The same night the floodwaters had tried to swallow half the grid. The dish steadied. The red warnings flickered once, twice, then died. Below her, in the glass-walled boardroom 2 floors down, she could see silhouettes moving. Marcus in his Brioni suit, pacing. The Patek on his wrist catching the overhead lights every time he gestured. 3 other executives watched the main monitor. The upload percentage had climbed another 9 points. They didn't know yet who was pushing it. Victoria whispered to the wind, "You're not the only one who can read a manual, Marcus." She secured the last cable. The static charge that had followed her all night finally eased. The stuffed rabbit memory flashed again. The little girl in the shelter that night had offered her half a granola bar after the lights came back. Victoria had stayed just long enough to make sure the child fell asleep holding her toy. Then she had disappeared before anyone could ask her name. Now that child was 14, and she still asked about the nice lady who fixed things. Victoria started back down the ladder. Her boot slipped on a patch of ice that Marcus's maintenance team had missed. The fall was only 3 rungs, but the impact rattled her teeth. Pain flared in her left wrist. She caught herself, breath fogging in the night air. For a second, the old doubt tried to crawl back in. The same doubt that had lived in her chest the morning he had dropped the cardboard box on her desk and said, "You're useless here. Take your box and go." She looked at the napkin again. The crayon rabbit stared back, one ear still bravely attached. Small things, true things. She flexed her wrist. It would bruise, but it would hold. The uplink was stable. The boardroom monitor would now be showing a clean green signal. Marcus would be checking his watch. She descended the rest of the way, each rung a counted heartbeat. At the bottom, she found the night shift electrician waiting again, this time with a fresh cup of black coffee. He held it out like an offering. "Ma'am, they're saying the whole East Wing just came back online. The one that's been dark since the sabotage yesterday." Victoria took the coffee. It burned her tongue in the best way. "Sabotage is a strong word. Call it a stress test." He swallowed. "They're also saying the original grid designer from 14 might still be alive. That she never really left. That the name on the plaque in the basement isn't just a memorial. She studied him over the rim of the cup. The man was maybe 26, same age she had been when she rebuilt the entire substation after the flood. His eyes held the same mix of fear and awe she had seen in the mirror once. "Names are just labels," she said quietly. "What matters is whether the lights stay on for the people who need them." He nodded once, slowly. Then he reached into his own pocket and produced a small object wrapped in plastic. A child-sized rabbit keychain, ear visibly repaired with careful stitching. "My little sister," he said. "She was in that shelter in 2014. She still sleeps with the original. Made me carry this one so I'd remember to thank whoever brought the power back that night. I think I just did." Victoria's throat tightened. She took the keychain. It was warm from his hand. She slipped it onto the same ring that held her voltage tester. 2 rabbits now. One drawn, one stitched. Both survivors. She left the electrician standing there and walked back toward the service elevator. The wrist throbbed in time with her steps. The new keychain clicked softly against the tester with every stride. Another small reversal, another quiet proof that the debt was moving in the right direction. But the boardroom still waited. Marcus still wore that $6,000 suit like armor. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. The mirrored wall showed a woman who looked like she belonged in overalls, not headlines. Good. Let them keep underestimating her. She pressed the button for the boardroom level. The car began its descent. Somewhere in the building a clock kept ticking. Victoria pushed open the boardroom door. The smell of expensive cologne and fear hit her at once. Marcus turned, his Italian shoes squeaking once on the polished marble. His eyes widened when he saw the voltage tester, the keychain, the faint smear of rooftop grease on her cheek. She didn't speak. She simply walked to the main terminal, sat down, and began typing the next sequence. The upload bar jumped another 4%. In the silence that followed, only the soft click of the rabbits could be heard. One torn ear, one stitched, both still listening. Marcus leaned against the edge of the long walnut table, arms crossed so tightly the brioni seemed strained. The Patek on his wrist caught the overhead LEDs and threw them back like accusations. "You're wasting everyone's time," he said, voice low enough that the 2 junior analysts at the far end pretended not to hear. "This system has been audited top to bottom. Legacy patches don't magically appear because some night shift nobody feels like playing hero." Victoria didn't look up from the terminal. Her fingers moved in the same deliberate rhythm she once used to hotwire Huey gunships under night vision blackout. The keystrokes were quiet, almost polite. The upload bar inched from 31 to 35%. She could feel the old code waking beneath her palms, lines she had written herself in a windowless lab in 2009, back when the company still carried her name on the original incorporation papers. Marcus took one step closer. The Italian leather soles whispered against marble. "Security is on their way. When they escort you out this time, your badge gets shredded. No severance. No reference. Just like I promised the board last quarter." She typed another string. The mainframe answered with a soft chime that only she recognized. Somewhere in the server racks 3 floors below, a long-forgotten failover script stirred. The lights in the boardroom flickered once, then steadied. Victoria finally lifted her gaze. She let the silence stretch until the cologne in the air felt thick enough to choke on. "Day 17, she said, almost under her breath. "And you still think the problem is me?" The door behind her opened. 2 more guards entered, batons clipped to their belts, eyes uncertain. They had heard the rumors now, whispers from the janitorial crew, from the old-timers in logistics who remembered a woman who could debug a satellite link with a paperclip and a soldering iron. One guard cleared his throat. The other simply stared at the voltage tester resting beside her keyboard like it was a live round. Marcus snapped his fingers. "Remove her." The guards hesitated half a second too long. That half second was enough. The terminal screen flashed green. A single line of text appeared in the corner. System integrity restored. 39%. The air handlers kicked up a notch. Cool air rushed across the room carrying the faint metallic smell of ozone and heated circuitry. One of the analysts at the far end actually gasped. "Victoria stood." She unclipped the 2 rabbits from her belt loop and set them gently on the walnut table. The torn ear flopped sideways. The stitched one sat upright, button eyes catching the light. Marcus stared at the childish keychain as if it had insulted him personally. "Those don't belong in here," he muttered. "They've been here longer than you have," she answered. Then she walked out between the guards, who parted without being told. Her boots left faint prints of rooftop grease on the marble. The door closed behind her with a soft pneumatic sigh. She took the stairwell instead of the elevator, descending 2 floors to the legal department where the next crisis was already metastasizing. The smell of fresh printer toner and burnt coffee met her on the landing. A paralegal looked up from a stack of foreclosure notices, eyes widening when she recognized the woman who had just been removed. Victoria didn't break stride. She pushed through the glass doors into the document room. Rows of bankers' boxes lined the walls. Every contract, every amendment, every forgotten equity agreement from the company's first decade. Marcus had ordered them all pulled for the audit. He thought he was burying her. He had simply handed her the map. She found the right box on the 3rd shelf. Invoice number 4471. The paper was yellowed at the edges, but the signature at the bottom was still bold. Hers, dated 11 years before Marcus ever wore his first brioni. The transfer of ownership clause had been hidden in subsection 14b, written in the language only the original architect would recognize. She photographed it with her phone, sent the image to a single encrypted contact, then slid the folder back exactly where she had found it. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. 1 word from the contact. Confirmed. She slept 3 hours on a cot in the maintenance lounge, the stuffed rabbits resting on her chest like a promise. At 4:12 a.m., the building management system pinged her again. Another firewall had collapsed. Marcus had escalated. He was now personally reviewing every line of source code from 2009 forward, hiring 3 outside firms to trace the ghost patches that kept appearing overnight. Victoria brewed coffee in the break room microwave. The smell of scorched plastic joined the scent of old grease still on her coveralls. She sipped once, then headed for the roof access ladder. The city was still dark below. Wind whipped across the gravel rooftop, carrying the distant hum of the freeway. She knelt beside the original satellite uplink dish, the one no one had touched since the building was new. With a socket wrench and the same voltage tester, she loosened a single corroded bolt. Beneath it lay a small USB drive wrapped in oilcloth. She had placed it there herself the night she walked away from everything. She plugged it into the maintenance terminal bolted to the parapet. The drive contained the master key that would unlock the final 23% of the legacy system. One command and the entire corporate structure would begin to unravel in public view. But she waited. Not yet. Back inside, the corridors were waking. Executives in spotless suits streamed toward the elevators, clutching leather portfolios and $9 lattes. They gave her a wider berth now. Some actually nodded small, uncertain respects from people who had once watched Marcus fire her in the atrium with 200 witnesses. She reached the data center sublevel at 6:47 a.m. The new crisis was already waiting. A junior sysadmin named Patel stood pale in front of the main rack. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the 58-degree air. "The audit bots just flagged a root-level backdoor," he whispered. "It's been dormant for years, but now it's live." Marcus is upstairs screaming that it's sabotage. He wants the entire system taken offline in 90 minutes. "If we do that, we lose the last failover before the auction. The company valuation drops another 40 million by morning." Victoria studied the scrolling log on Patel's screen. Her own handwriting stared back at her in the comments. Clean, precise, dated the week her daughter was born. The backdoor wasn't sabotage. It was insurance. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the 2 rabbits again. Patel blinked at them, confused. Victoria clipped one to the handle of the server rack, the other to her own belt loop. "Leave it open," she told him. "Tell Marcus the ghost is about to save his job. Then get out of the room." Patel hesitated only a moment before he obeyed. The door hissed shut behind him. Alone with the racks, Victoria began typing. Each command was a memory. 287 missions flown in systems no one was supposed to know existed. Nights spent writing fail-safes while her baby slept in a carrier beside the desk. The upload bar climbed another 7%. The fans inside the racks spun up, a low comforting roar that felt like old rotor blades slicing night air. At 7:22 a.m. Marcus burst through the door, tie askew, face flushed. 2 board members trailed behind him, both of whom had sat in that same atrium and watched her dismissal 18 months earlier. Their Italian shoes squeaked in perfect unison. Marcus pointed one manicured finger. "That's enough. You're done here. I don't care what rumors are floating around the service corridors. This ends today." Victoria kept typing. The bar hit 51%. The entire building's lights dimmed for 3 full seconds, then surged back stronger than before. Somewhere on the top floor, a printer began spitting out new equity certificates with a name no one had seen in print for over a decade. She finally turned. The 2 rabbits clicked softly as she moved. One still on the server rack, one at her waist. Marcus's eyes locked on them. Recognition flickered, then died. He still didn't understand. But the board members behind him had gone very still. One of them, an older man with silver at the temples, actually took a half-step backward as if he had just seen a ghost wearing coveralls. Victoria's voice stayed even. "You have 14 hours and 12 minutes until that gavel falls, Marcus. Keep auditing. Keep threatening. Every time you push, I push back with something you buried. And every time, the debt gets a little closer to paid." She unplugged the USB drive, wrapped it again in the oilcloth, and slipped it into her pocket beside the folded original napkin from the day her daughter was born, the one with the tiny ink drawing of 2 rabbits holding hands. Then she walked past all 3 men. None of them tried to stop her. The grind had found its deepest rhythm yet. She spent the next 90 minutes in the basement mechanical room rerouting power so that even if Marcus succeeded in taking the primary servers offline, the ghost system would stay alive on battery backups she had quietly installed years ago. The smell of ozone mixed with the faint metallic tang of her own sweat. Every 20 minutes her phone buzzed with another frantic text from an unrecognized number. Someone on the audit team begging for help, for clarity, for the next keystroke that would keep the company from bleeding out. She answered none of them. Not yet. At 9:04 a.m. a new mini-crisis arrived in the form of a courier packet delivered to the loading dock. Inside were fresh court documents. Marcus had filed an emergency injunction to freeze all legacy ownership claims before the auction. The filing cited unknown saboteur and listed her employee ID from the night shift roster. The signature at the bottom of the motion was his bold, confident final. Victoria read the pages once, then folded them neatly around the 2 rabbits. She carried the small bundle up 6 flights of stairs like it weighed nothing. On the 5th floor landing she paused, pressed the napkin-wrapped keychain to her chest, and thought of her daughter eating cereal at the kitchen table right now, probably asking the babysitter when Mom was coming home from her really long workday. The thought gave her the next move. She entered the compliance office at 9:37 a.m. 3 lawyers looked up, startled. She placed the court documents on the center desk, the rabbits sitting on top like silent witnesses. "File a counter-motion," she said. "Reference attachment C from the original 2009 articles. It's been scanned into the system 43 minutes ago under my old credentials. They can't freeze what they don't legally own yet." One of the lawyers, a woman with sharp glasses and a trembling hand, opened the folder. Her eyes widened at the signature. She looked up at Victoria as if seeing her for the first time. "You're her." Victoria didn't confirm it. She simply nodded once and left them to their work. The building felt different now. The air itself carried tension, like the static before a storm. Executives who had once smirked at her in the cafeteria now looked away when she passed. A few actually held doors. The rumor had grown legs. Someone had seen the original incorporation papers. Someone else had heard a call sign whispered in the server room that matched a classified flight log from a war most people had already forgotten. Marcus felt it too. She could tell by the way his office blinds stayed closed all morning. At 11:12 a.m., he emerged long enough to scream at a vice president in the hallway about leaks and disloyalty. His voice cracked on the last word. The Patek on his wrist flashed as he gestured wildly. Victoria watched from the opposite end of the corridor, half hidden behind a vending machine, the 2 rabbits clicking softly against her belt. She waited until he disappeared back into his glass cage, then slipped into the empty executive conference room. The long table still carried the faint scent of his cologne. She sat in the chair he usually occupied, pulled out her phone, and opened the secure app linked to the master system. The upload bar now reads 64%. One more major escalation and the final ownership transfer would trigger automatically at the exact moment the auction gavel fell. She typed a single maintenance command that would force Marcus's audit bots into an infinite diagnostic loop, buying her another 4 hours of breathing room. As she finished, the conference room door opened. Marcus stood there, tie completely gone now, collar open, eyes bloodshot. He looked at her sitting in his chair, looked at the rabbits on the table beside her phone, looked at the screen that showed his own audit tools spinning uselessly in circles. For the first time, something like fear moved behind the polished mask. "You," he said. The single word carried every mistake he had made in the last 18 months. Victoria stood slowly. She picked up the rabbits, clipped one back to her belt, and left the other sitting in the center of his expensive leather chair. 13 hours and 44 minutes. Keep watching, Marcus. The man you threw away is almost finished collecting. She walked out before he could answer. The door closed with the soft click of 2 button eyes still listening. The countdown continued. The morning of the auction arrived under a gray October sky, the kind that pressed down on the city like unpaid debt. By 9:47 a.m., the grand ballroom of the Meridian Grand Hotel had filled with 312 invited guests, investors, reporters, former board members, and the same cluster of polished executives who had once circled Marcus like loyal hounds. Their Italian loafers clicked across marble as they took seats facing the raised stage where a single mahogany podium waited beside an easel draped in black cloth. Marcus arrived at 10 sharp in a charcoal Brioni suit cut that morning, Patek gleaming at 10:03, hair lacquered into place. He moved through the crowd shaking hands that felt suddenly clammy. Victoria sat 3 rows back in a simple navy dress, the single remaining rabbit clipped to her belt like a quiet promise. She kept her eyes on the stage as the auctioneer, a silver-haired man named Harlan with a voice like aged bourbon, tapped the gavel at 10:15 exactly. Lot 47, Harlan announced. The entire intellectual property portfolio, physical plant, and residual ownership of Sentinel Dynamics, currently valued at $287 million. Bidding starts at $110 million. Marcus leaned forward, lips tight. He had prearranged a proxy bid through a shell company in Zurich. The room murmured. Numbers climbed in crisp increments. 130, 165, 205. At 240 million, the proxy dropped out. Marcus's jaw flexed. He raised his own paddle once, twice, sweat darkening the collar of his $1,200 shirt. Then the main screen behind the podium flickered. Not the prepared slide deck. A new feed. Live. The camera angle showed the inside of a scarred steel hangar 2,000 miles away on a decommissioned airfield outside Fallon, Nevada. A single man stood in front of an F-14 Tomcat that looked older than most of the people in the room. His flight suit was faded, but the patches were unmistakable. 287 combat missions, 3 Navy crosses. The name tape read simply R. Hale. The crowd inhaled as one. Robert Hale stepped forward. His voice, calm and low, carried through the speakers like distant thunder. 18 months ago, I was told my designs were scrap metal, that the man wearing them had no place in a boardroom. Today, that man stands in front of you with proof of original patents filed in 1997, predating every acquisition Marcus Langford engineered. The master system you're bidding on was never his to sell. It was always mine. And as of 10:29 a.m. Eastern, the automated transfer triggered by my final upload has executed. Sentinel Dynamics is no longer for sale. Gasps rippled outward. Phones rose. Marcus shot to his feet, face the color of old paper. This is a hoax. Security. Harlan's gavel cracked like a rifle shot. Mr. Hale has provided blockchain-verified timestamps, original ink signatures on the 1997 filings, and a live feed of the physical servers now rerouting under his sole control. The auction is cancelled. Ownership reverts to the original patent holder. Mr. Hale, the floor is yours. Robert looked straight into the camera. The entire ballroom could see the tremble in his left hand, the same tremble that once steadied a control stick at Mach 2. He lifted a small object into frame. The second rabbit, its button eyes catching the hangar light. "Victoria," he said, voice softening for the first time. "You kept the watch. I kept the promise." In the third row, Victoria closed her eyes once, the rabbit at her belt suddenly heavy with 18 months of quiet war. Marcus stood frozen as every head turned toward him. The polished mask had shattered. His Patek caught the lights at 10:37 a.m., and for once it looked cheap. He walked slowly to the side exit like a man crossing a minefield. No one stopped him. 31 minutes later, the private knock came on the door of the green room. Victoria opened it. Marcus stood there without the suit jacket now, sleeves rolled, tie long gone. His eyes were raw. "I was arrogant," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I saw a janitor in coveralls and assumed that was the whole story. I never asked why a man who could rebuild an avionics suite with parts from a junkyard was pushing a mop at 3 in the morning. I mocked the rabbits. I mocked you.
I'm sorry, Victoria.
You deserved better than what I gave." She studied him for a long moment, the scent of his cologne now mixed with fierce sweat. Then she simply nodded once.
No sermon. No gloating.
The debt had been paid in public. The rest was between him and whatever was left of his conscience. Marcus stepped into the main ballroom at 11:19 a.m. The crowd had not left. If anything, it had grown. Cameras rolled. He walked to the podium on legs that felt borrowed, gripped the wood until his knuckles whitened, and looked out at the faces that had once cheered his every raise. "I have spent the last year chasing a valuation I didn't earn," he said, each word scraping out like rust. 18 months ago, I humiliated a man who built the heart of this company while I was still learning how to knot a tie. Robert Hale designed the original flight control algorithms that kept pilots alive in a war we've all tried to forget. Victoria kept his secrets and his final prototype safe when I tried to bury them. They both showed more integrity in coveralls than I did in Brioni. I was wrong. Publicly. Completely. I resign effective immediately. The board can have my shares. They were never really mine. He stepped back. The silence that followed felt like oxygen rushing into a vacuum. Then the applause started, slow at first, then thunderous. Not for Marcus. For the truth finally spoken in front of everyone who had laughed. 2 hours later, the Meridian Grand had emptied. Victoria found Robert in the service corridor behind the ballroom, sitting on an overturned milk crate, the rabbit in his lap. The hangar feed had been replaced by real sunlight slanting through a high window. He looked smaller without the flight suit and the cameras. Just a father who had once flown 287 missions and then swept floors so his daughter could eat. She sat beside him. Their shoulders touched. For a long minute, neither spoke. The rabbit's button eyes stared up at both of them, worn threadbare from years of being carried through every low moment and every silent victory. Robert finally reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded letter, the same one she had slipped under his windshield 18 months earlier. The one that read simply, Day 1. The debt is coming due. He placed it between them on the crate. You collected every cent, he said quietly. Victoria smiled, the kind of smile that arrives after the longest night. We collected it together. Outside, the October wind moved across the parking lot where a single black truck waited, its bed already loaded with the few tools Robert had kept. Marcus's empty Mercedes sat 2 spaces away, driver's door open, keys still in the ignition. No one had touched it. In the years that followed, Sentinel Dynamics became something quieter. Robert took a corner office but kept the coveralls in the closet just in case. Victoria stayed on as Director of Ethical Systems, her title, her rules. They hired single parents, veterans, mechanics who could read a blueprint better than a spreadsheet. The rabbits, now both of them, lived on a shelf in the main lobby under a small brass plate that read, Never underestimate what the quiet ones carry. Marcus Langford disappeared from the industry for 22 months. When he resurfaced, it was as a junior instructor at a community college teaching code to night students. His first lecture began with an apology that lasted 9 minutes. He still wore the Patek, but now it was on a wrist that had learned how to type lesson plans at 2:14 a.m. Some debts, it turns out, keep teaching long after they are paid. And on certain crisp mornings, when the light hit the lobby just right, the 2 rabbits seemed to watch every new hire walk through the doors, reminding them that the lowest place in the room is often where the real work begins. What matters is not the suit you wear when you fall. It's the steady hands that pick up the pieces when no one is watching. The quiet promise kept in server rooms and hangar shadows. The willingness to carry someone else's hope on your belt until the day it can finally sit in the light again. That is how legacies are rebuilt. Not with noise, but with time, patience, and the slow, certain collection of every debt, the powerful thought they could walk away from. The end.